amendments to the reserve have overlooked and might remove some of this amenity of the playground and the parking area, specifically located directly on the lakefront. And these areas are currently family focused, families of all ages, inclusive of all ages, and they actually work. And I think there's some aspects that are working quite well, and should they be changed. Hugh, I'm a little bit thrown to the wind because as I walked in here this morning, I saw this beautiful presentation of the detail of the lakefront plan, which I hadn't seen before. It was dated 21st of September. And in many ways, seeing that has actually answered a lot of issues that I had here. So I wish that I had actually seen that before. Not a lot of detail was available to us, really, going through this submission. And thank you for your clarification that I'm here to answer, tell me if I'm correct, specifically the proposed amendments to the reserve management plan. That is solely good. Okay.
Absolutely.
Good, thank you for that. So obviously we support a playground in this area. It's fabulous. We have people coming from Tauranga, when Noel and I are working there. They say there's nothing like that in Tauranga. It's free, and even with their beautiful beaches, they're still totally attracted to this playground and lakefront area. The proposed amendment that alerted us or alarmed us the most was that the playground area has been completely dropped from those amendments. It's no longer sort of an entity within that plan. And personally, as a business owner, that also removed permission for the mobile food vendor to be located there. So at the moment, we sort of have an exclusivity there, which of course we like. But it's really important. What we've observed is parents with children like to be close to the playground. The parents can sit, the coffee's there, the food's there. They're not traipsing 100 metres or more, perhaps, to this new venture cafe, which looks like it's going to be located closer to the lake. And I just wonder if the mobile food vendor, or semi-mobile, as we are semi-permanent, should be included within the concept of this playground. My vision of a new venture is that, it may be heavily tourist oriented, it may be very expensive, and it may not be child oriented, and we would like to see something sort of retained, more directed towards children, with affordable food and drinks that are quickly delivered in relation to the playground. So while our lease allows us to have first right of refusal on a new complex, we would like to suggest that new complex perhaps be broken down into more separate places, and that it's that the plan clearly tells us, who is the audience, who is this area being developed for? Is it to attract more tourists, or is it to maintain that amenity, the family amenity of the playground as it exists at the moment? And I talk about older families too. We get a lot of dying and sick people from the hospice and the hospital. They are down there with their families. So people are bringing their elderly groups down. And it's obviously lovely to see it. And there's good access for them. They can get in and out very easily. And there's a kind of a carnival atmosphere there with the children and the kiosk kind of style. So that's kind of our concerns directly relating to the amendment. There's obviously a lot of consultation that we would like to have with our interim location if it occurs. We have a grease trap, and so it'd be really nice if we could, rationalise that in some way. Can we use the sound shell or the old cafe's grease trap? Will we be located with the ticketing kiosks? I feel that the amendments talk about kiosk, and it might be an unfortunate coincidence that we called ourselves a kiosk, but the amendment is lumping us in with the ticketing kiosks, and that's not really who we are. We'd like to be acknowledged as something separate that will possibly be lost with the removal of section 7.2.6.8.2, as I've mentioned in my submission. Car parking. Rotorua is not tropical, as another submitter has mentioned. In the winter time, that's when our elderly locals come, sit in their cars and enjoy chips and a coffee. They're not there during the summer, they're pushed out by tourists, but it's really important. I mean, that waterfront in winter is bitter, and the latest artist impression I saw on the council website of this area where this car park, the amenity of this car park is huge. And it looks like, there's people sitting there on the grass enjoying fireworks, presumably bird poo free area. And we have, fireworks twice a year here? And I just don't like the vision of this sort of concreted concert in the park a la Auckland Domain. I mean, the designers...
You're steering more again to the Lakefront development plan, and that isn't... your views will be canvassed on that as an existing operator down there. It's really on the issues that we have asked you to submit on. This is a policy, so it's essentially a far drier affair than the developments we'll be able to create once we have the policy in place.
Thank you, that is reassuring that we can examine that. So 2 points which are probably off key, but I'm going to try anyway. Overnight camping, ridiculous. I mean, the unfortunate homeless are down there. Their dogs are pooing everywhere. As Kalara Jets have said, we observe it, we see it, and it's just crazy. Even where we are by the toilets, not so much by the sound shell, they're parking, it's like they're living, actually they may not be the unfortunate homeless, they may be just backpackers. They stay there all day, they're there for weeks, so totally against that. I'm not sure if this is the right time to bring it up, but Tiarawa's submission under leases and concessions said that they were interested in all commercial ventures down there, and I was wondering if that included our commercial interests down there. I'm not quite sure how that fits in. And
right. I'm actually going to open it up for questions now, unless, Noel, you have something you'd just like to add. Yes.
I'm there every day. I'm like in the hub. I see everything, everywhere. Now, this holiday, this week gone, we've been like one entity. The playground and the kiosk has just been one entity. Children, parents are sitting there, children come in and, we're going to Archie's to get their ice cream and to get their chips and to get their soft drinks. The mum's sitting there having a cup of tea, and then they're back to the playground. And what we're scared of, we're just gone. 16 years sitting there, just taken away for no reason, but someone wants a restaurant, cafe. This goes hand in hand. You can't separate it, I'm afraid. The kiosk and the playground is just one entity. And I've sat there all this week. I've worked for 9 days straight, and it's just been humming. We've had a circus there. We've had all the big slides there. We've had the market there. We've got a big church meeting there. We've got the horses there, and we're there. And it is just fantastic how it's working. But if we get rid of Archie's, and I tell people, there's no future for us, they're saying, what, you're kidding, that's dumb. Why would you get rid of this? Why would you get rid of Archie's? That's all I'm saying, because I know how it works. And like Caro Jets, I'm sitting there every day looking at everybody and everything, and this facility, amenity, is essential for the happiness and the joy and the peace of mind for parents, children, and every other thing. That's all I've got to say.
Thank you, Noel, for that. Councillor Donaldson. And, I'm going to say no, actually,
Okay.
Linda, because otherwise I've already been quite lenient on time for both first two submitters, and we do appreciate all your points of view. We have got your written information in front of us. Councillor Donaldson.
I just had a question about your concern in your submission about removing all sections relating to the playground area, but in the very first objective in the reserve management plan, it says to provide an enhanced family-based play experience for locals and as a premier destination for visitors. Does that allay your concerns that there will be a playground?
A play-based experience. When I first read it, it really didn't mean anything because it's so nothing. But having seen that additional information that's now available, I begin to understand the concept. So I don't think that the amendments are really very clear or set out clearly what that means. And perhaps by the inclusion of a playground area section again, encompassing our concerns, may clarify that for everybody.
That's very good feedback, and I do know that it was made to be a broader description than just playground, because for some people when they see playground they think of 5 and 8 year olds, and actually it is an area where we want all ages. So but very good feedback. Mr. Thomas.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for your submission today, Linda. I know it can be a bit daunting coming along and talking to a group of people like this. Look, you raised some great points there for me around the nature of what our waterfront or lakefront will look like in the future, and not just a tourist area, but also an area for locals. So I have heard all your concerns, and really I have a question for the Chair, which is, when we're going through our deliberations, will we have an opportunity to ask staff to clarify some points that have been raised by submitters?
Certainly.
Great, thank you.
We can get any information, and I've already requested a copy of the Township Reserves Plan of 2006, which was the original one that many of the existing leaseholders will be familiar, because that's what they're operating under. So we will have all that information and anything more we need in order to reach our decisions.
So I'd just like to reassure you that you have raised some points for me that I will be asking staff to clarify.
Councillor Sturt, final question.
Yes, Sport and Recreation Portfolio Leader, I'm delighted with your submission and your admission that after seeing some of the proposals out in the Gala area that some of your concerns have been allayed, which is really good. What I also liked is that you gave us a perception that there's not only preschoolers, as a grandparent, I take my grandkids down there, but the elderly who go down there, and the people in the off-peak areas in winter go down there and it's used. And yes, the proposals were vague as toward a playground, and many of my colleagues around this table ensured that the focus on a playground was not lost. The issue I think you're mainly, and I need to ask you why, that you're mainly focusing on is the affordability side of a few dollars for families to spend down there, as opposed to a high-end restaurant or fine dining, that sort of thing. So what you're saying is that there has to be a strong link between an operator like yourselves, or operators like yourselves, and the playground positioning.
I believe so. I talked about a proposed restaurant cafe being 100 metres away, too expensive, full of tourists. No parent wants to be lining up with their children. I recently had lunch at a place not far from where we are, and it was $55. Well, that's no fun. Maybe I don't go out enough, but parents can't afford that. we see it daily. They've got dollars to spend.
Thank you. Any further questions? No? All right. Thank you very much, Linda and Noel, for attending our hearing today. Okay, so our next submitter is Mr. Rodney Milne. Rod, would you like to come and take a seat, please? You have 10 minutes, and please do leave a couple of minutes for questions. We have your submission in front of us, so...
Morning all. Rod Milne. I've been in this area since 1955. I'm just coming up 80 now.
Would you like to have a seat, Mr. Milne? Would you like to have a seat?
Oh, I don't know.
And I just want to let everyone know we are just one moment, Mr. Milne, just one moment. We are now live streaming. We are now live streaming. So this is, and so I would like you to use your microphone so that it can be recorded for people who are not sitting with us today, but who that's right. So it will be on the council website, which means that it is an accurate record, and there may be some people who are sitting at home unable to attend the hearing who are interested in what the submitters have to say. So welcome, and please proceed.
Yeah, okay, right. Well, I've been around this area for a long time. I'm not here with vested interest in anything. I know the area, and I tramp in it. I've been all over it in the last 25 years, so I know it all. I feel when an issue crops up, I'm entitled to speak about it. And I don't just run off on silly stuff and that. But basically, down there, I was down there this morning, by the way, and just had a walk around, and I stood at the War Memorial thing and read the names. Hadn't read them for a while. At the moment, I've got really two submissions. That storm one I'll just bring up afterwards. Yeah, people go down there to enjoy it. It's a lovely area. It's tranquil at times, but other times it's stormy, rainy, cold, and people like to sit in their cars. And there's a young guy down there with a pram this morning. Had a little baby in it, and he's going for a walk out of his car. Another old lady there, she was just, limping around a bit and just got out. I don't know, a few other people. And sometimes it's busy, but not all the time. People like to go down and sit there and have their lunch, and it's a lovely outlook. It's the only place around Rotorua that's got that type of thing. The rest of the areas are dodgy. I wouldn't let a woman go down to Sulphur Point and that type of thing. It's just not on. But there's nothing wrong with the area. It just needs a tidy up. And I've put here, the aged. I'm aged, but I was out in Waka Forest yesterday tramping. But I helped for 10 years with Special Olympics with Deborah Bell. Voluntary, never got paid for it. And, we used to have to help them around, and some of them perhaps had to be driven somewhere and this and that. So I know what it's all about. And basically, it works down there. And by the way, the police drive through there fairly regularly. Just keep an eye on it. I went through the other day and they're driving through. So they need that access and stuff like that. Another thing that I didn't realise until that's what made me, you're going to put the War Memorial Drive into car parks. Now, my father fought in Italy. He was in the battles of Cassino and up through Italy.
I just need to interrupt you. We're not discussing the plan that you have. The pictures are on the wall out there. We are discussing the policy that will help us manage that area. And
I'm allowed to put my view. I'm not criticising.
You are, except that any views regarding the lakefront development are not for this committee. That picture is not for this committee to decide on. The committee is deciding on what we have sent out to you, which is
I've done it. Yeah,
the update on the management plan for the reserves.
Okay.
So because it's a policy, the wording is quite specific, and the policies are there. So please do feel free to comment
how it is at the moment
on the policy,
which
but the plan itself is not something this committee will be discussing.
People in wheelchairs like to go down there and look around. But, I've been to the RSA and the MPs about this War Memorial Drive going into car parks. It's a beautiful thing. It's got all the return soldiers there, name was dead, you know, and that type of thing. And a tree from Crete, I think, and stuff like that. Right. So, okay, that's just what I'm talking about. Now, another issue that's going to crop up, which nothing to do with develop it or not develop it. The Nongataha stream flooded and caused a lot of problems. Now, I've done some work out in it, and I know the catchments and that. A lot of silt's coming to the lake out there, and every storm brings it round. And also, on your long-term plan, or whatever it's called, you show that area as a floodplain. If Rotorua, it filled to the brim 2 years ago, and it wiped out the wall in the front of that camp. I used to go down and have a look at the stream mouth at Nongataha, and it rose about a metre or more, and it was covering the jetty there. It hit the lakefront here, and then you had that storm, which came in, luckily, from the northeast. If it had come straight from the north, it would have done a lot more damage, and it did do damage down there. Now, a lot of lakeweed went into Hamarana area, but if the storm came from the north, it would have put a lot of stuff in down here. Now, they have to put either sometimes diggers in there to get the silt out. We might have a dry year this year, by the way, and they'll need to put diggers in there and stuff, you know, but if you're going to put boardwalks, and I'm not criticising it, I'm pointing facts to you. And you get a storm, and it's just going to drive everything into there, on top of everything. The boardwalk will have to be high up, and then it'll be too high, because the lake will be low. Then it'll be flooded, you know, I mean, this is what happens. And I've worked with the weather here all my life, tramping and farming and stuff. And this is in my submission. I'm entitled to mention this because...
Oh, yes.
Yeah, right. So the other bit was just, you know, pointing out things. But all that second page of mine points out the flood issues that could happen down there. And you, as I said, your flood plain comes into the park there about halfway across. Rotorua could rise right up, and you can't get rid of the water. It nearly did 2 years ago, and then the rain stopped. But if it came any higher, it's all round Sulphur Point in the park down there, water. It shows it on your plan, 100-year plan, but we're getting this stuff all the time now. And if that had carried on a bit, you would have had water right across the front down there. Yeah, right. So that's what happens. And I've been through storms, I've been tramped in it, I've farmed in it, contracted in it. I know what happens. And the silt coming off that Nongataha thing is shocking. And the Utahina is bringing a lot of silt down there. I know the headwaters. And that stuff is driving this way with the northerly storms. Northeasters, but they can turn to the north and come in. And they will bring a lot of silt, and when the lake, you get a dry year, you know, I'm talking about rain events, but also dry seasons, they have to put diggers in there so the Lakeland Queen can get out and all that stuff. So, I mean, there's these practical things that have to be looked at, and if they wreck the whole lake wall along there with a big storm, you're going to have to put diggers in and stuff across it, and you know, I mean, this is a fact of life. So I'm sure you all had a look at it when this last one happened. Stuff was everywhere. So, and the silt's coming slowly, but surely this way from those two streams. They've had a lot of problems up in the, as we all know, and also the Utahina headwaters. A lot of stuff's come down into the river there. In the bush too, surprised me. You're lucky the Purina didn't do it badly. That would have made a lot of a mess, yeah, because the waka sort of held it. The rain didn't go out there quite as much. So I'm just giving you the facts. I'm not here to criticise. I'm entitled to give you the facts because I know the area. I'm an outdoor guy. I tramp in it. I know it all. And you know, these things you've got to look at. No one does. No one mentions it. That'll do it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Millen. Would you... Okay, thank you. Now, we have, our next presenter is Mr Ian McLean, and we have a presentation that's all ready to go. Tēnā koe, Ian, welcome.
Kia ora, Madam Chair. Can I ask what direction I point this at to make it go?
Well,
Okay.
point at either, the little red pointer will only go on one screen at a time. We haven't quite managed to get it on both, although I know there is technology for that.
That's fine. Thank you. Well, excuse me. Well, good morning, Madam Chair, councillors, Rangatira Rama and Mr Board Chairman. My submission this morning is quite simple, one submission, that the Council add a further objective in the reserve management plan, and the suggested objective is to respect Lake Rotorua and its natural environment in all development, permits for uses of the reserve. In the past, the history of the lake was disrespect by the city. Garbage used to be thrown into the lake. And then the leachate from the municipal sewerage septic tanks went straight into the lake. The council, the district council, has changed its attitude. It's now respecting the lake, the sewerage schemes that have gone in, and the large number of dollars being spent and still to be spent show the respect the council is showing. If you look at the lakefront at the moment, it obviously needs improvement, and respect would mean that the lakefront does need improvement. My submission is that the respect for the lake and the environment needs to be explicit in the plan. It's not sufficient to rely on the Reserve Management Act or other general council policies. It needs to be explicit in this plan so that as development and activities are carried out in future, this requirement is there before the council and before those giving the approvals. The plan looks good overall, but the devil is in the detail. And as was announced at your meeting, Councillor Sturt, on Thursday, the shareholders are to be consulted. The question is, who are these shareholders? Important are those with mana whenua, nearby residents, landowners, existing commercial owners, Te Arawa Lakes Trust. But who else? I suggest to you that the lake is a stakeholder, that the environment is a stakeholder, that future generations are stakeholders, and that Rotorua Lakes Council is the trustee for the lake, the environment and the future. So, on behalf of the unrecognised stakeholders, I propose this objective to be included with the three others in the draft objectives. To respect Lake Rotorua and its natural environment in all development and permits for the uses of the reserve. Now, what effect would this have? And I'm not going into the detail of the plan, but just to illustrate the effect this would have. Firstly, the walkway would probably not encroach on the lake, except where it is essential. It may be essential for a walkway to encroach on the lake in some places, but it's not essential straight out in front of the main lakefront area. The Kānaka Grove would be protected. I apologise for a typo in the written submission. The word Kaikatea appeared. It wasn't even Kaikatoa, which would have been close, but it was the Kānaka Grove would be protected. Visitor experience would be enhanced by things like state-of-the-art videos showing the history, the Maori story, the story of the eruption, the story of the wildlife, and the story of the lake restoration. And finally, native bird habitat would be considered. One of the most precious things at the lakefront are the papango, which are, of course, the most beautiful bird in the world. And so thank you for this opportunity. I hope you'll consider the submission.
Thank you very much, Mr McLean. Now I'll open, yes, Councillor Tapsell.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you so much, Ian. Your presentation actually gives me so much joy as a Sustainable Living Portfolio lead, because it's wonderful to see other people so invested in our environment as well. I'm just wondering, perhaps, because I have asked on Thursday for an environmental impact analysis to be taken part, because likewise I wasn't sure where the environment sat in this. Will the environmental impact analysis satisfy your needs in ensuring there's no adverse effects to the development?
It's good, but the problem is it comes a bit late. If the ideas are developed without taking into account the environment during the development, then the environmental impact analysis is good, but it's playing catch up. And things such as the location of the walkway. Does that go out into the lake or not? That's something that's really central to this concept in the plan, but it's something that needs to be worked through right at the beginning, rather than the environment playing catch up.
Councillor Donaldson.
Thank you, Chair. Through you, Ian, it was just that point on the effect of your proposed addition to the objectives, the effect of the walkway not encroaching on the lake. So does that mean in the proposed design where there is a raised walkway across water, you're opposed to that in principle? Unless it's necessary. And it may be necessary, for example, further round from the Coast Guard round to St Faith's Church. It may not be possible to obtain access on the land. And so the only place for a walkway, and I agree one is needed, is on the water. But what my basic point would be, that structures out into the lake should only be there if they're really needed. If they're really needed. We're not like Auckland, which is filling in its harbour year by year. We're different. We try to protect our lake. And I believe the lake should be protected against encroachment as far as possible and as far as is sensible.
Thank you for that point. Mr Thomas.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for your presentation, Ian. Really succinct and to the point, and hasn't really left me with an opportunity to ask a question for clarification. But I will enjoy discussing with you later on around the nature of respect for the lake and what role a boardwalk or something might play in the part. But I don't think it's a question I can ask now, because it wouldn't be clarification, be more debate. But no doubt we'll talk about it soon.
Thank you, Mr Thomas. Councillor Sturt.
I haven't got a question, but I just acknowledge you, Ian, and take into account your submission, which details the multi-purpose use of a reserve for walkways, cyclists, and the different myriad of people, and your emphasis on an advisory group needing iwi representation. So I just compliment you on your submission. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr McLean, I'd like to thank you for writing out a policy for us to discuss. It certainly is a lot easier if someone has articulated it clearly, as you have done, all the points they wish to be included. It makes it easier than for us trying to pull apart a general comment. And I would recommend you and many of the others here, if you have the opportunity, to read the dialogue that informed the placing of the boardwalk. It discusses in quite a lot of detail the sympathy of understanding the nature of our scalloped shoreline around the lake, and exactly that we don't want to become what Auckland has become. And so it has indeed referenced the natural form and flow. Now, whether you agree with the end design or not but that is certainly on the boards for everyone to read, should they want to.
Could I just respond very briefly? I don't think we've quite used 10 minutes. Just to that point, the scalloped shoreline of the lake, the walkway as proposed is quite alien to the rest of the lake. around the edges of the lake, there are beaches which form a relatively relative long arc, but it's the feature of the lake edge is it's irregular right round the lake. It's interesting. It's irregular, and a structure sticking out. The main objective, as I understood it from the earlier documents, was that the walkway could go from point to point, from a point in the lake to another point. And frankly, it sticks out, and can I use the vernacular? It sticks out like tits on a bull.
We won't debate that,
I won't.
Mr. McLean. Thank
Anyway,
you.
thank you, Madam Chair.
You are entitled to your own opinion, and there will be various others around that. But I do thank you for your submission. And
thank you for your
providing
time and
something.
attention.
Thank you. Okay, now our next submitter is Mr. Laurie Durand. Welcome. Laurie, please have a seat. And you have 10 minutes, and we have your submission in front of us, so please just do leave a few minutes for questions. Thank you. Could you just check your microphone is on? Push the button till it glows green. Excellent.
Morning, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to submit. So I'm making a case for waka paddling and the Te Arawa waka to be recognised in your policy considerations. So Te Arawa waka found its home at the Lakefront some 20 years ago. So it's about 30 years old. Our local master carver, Lionel Grant, as part of an invitation to attend the 1990, the 150 celebration at Waitangi, there was 20 waka built around the country to unite iwi. Okay, so this is Te Arawa's tonga for that event. Okay, it's now found a home at the Lakefront, and I believe that needs to be recognised in some of the clauses where you recognise the likes of the Te Arawa Lakes Trust and Makoia Island. It has a special place in that. Out of the 20, I think it was 22 waka built, there's only 3 still afloat. The government funded the initiative at the time, and it's only because of the skills of the carver and Lionel's research into how to construct a waka out of the native, the materials, the log, as opposed to some who went to fiberglass and others, other construction stuff. So it has within Aotearoa a special place. You're late. or there early. So, yeah, we agree with the placement and the plan, and I know we were not talking about the plan when we're talking about the policy, but I would like recognition in the policy that to have Te Arawa waka at the western end and the recognition of paddling, we recognise walkways, we recognise cycling, we recognise the importance of all those other recreational activities, but I think waka paddling needs to be recognised in its own right at this venue, and we're asking that that be considered. In the initial discussions, we tried to point out that the placement of the current jetty, where the commercial operators, the float planes, the jet boats, the Lakeland Queen operate from, if that was moved more to the east, then we could have a perfect venue for more waka events. Especially Waka Ama, the only event place in New Zealand or the North Island at the moment is Karapiro, and that attracts considerable events because they have a laned course. We can't do that at the lakefront as long as the current jetties are in the place that they're in. Okay, we need a 500-metre course. So we did make some noises around this, but I would like it to be recognised that there is a place for waka paddling and Te Arawa waka in this policy. Kia ora.
Thank you very much, Laurie. Yes, Councillor Sturt.
Thank you, Laurie, and kia ora, Paula. Your suggestion that the jetty be moved further east, is that what I deduced from your... Are you saying down towards the Scout Hall end? Saying more down there, and that would create the opportunity to have that 500 metre
Yes.
racecourse venue?
Yes, that's exactly right. So our suggestion was the moving the current position of the Waka and the conflict and the safety issues of having to paddle right around the jetties was an issue. But if we were really going to look at developing the lakefront for Waka events, then the whole moving of that right out of the way.
And the Waka Armour staging would be more down the yacht club end.
The rowing, the yachting, the paddling, all of those water-based, that connection between the whenua and the lake would all be down that western end, the Aotearoa end.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Mr. Berriman-Camp.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Mōrena kōrua, and thank you for your submission. One thing, just so that I can get into my head, this morning we've heard from one of the commercial operators, and obviously one of the things that this policy is going to have to do is work out how we can accommodate everybody. And actually, Councillor Sturt just sort of clarification of my point, and this is what I'm trying to get into my head, because what you're proposing is more the public activities are more towards the western side, the commercial more towards the east. Yep. Okay. And this morning we heard from the commercial operators that actually the east would probably be more suitable for the public activities because it's more sheltered and everything. Is there a particular comment on that or seeking clarification? Would it particularly change things for you?
If you observe the current rowing activities, they all leave from that end, the eastern end, and they head round past Ohanemutu, tuck in behind Kawaha Point. That's the safest place for all the boating activities to go. If you go the other way, out to Motatara Point, you're immediately pushed out to, right into the centre of the lake. So just straight for a paddling venue, it doesn't make sense to have the paddling at that eastern end. It makes sense to have it at the western end down near the Water Sports Trust.
Thank you. Councillor Tapsell.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and kia ora kōrua. Thank you for clarifying that, actually, because it is important that we ensure that our public and anyone on the water is kept safe. The question I have is just around the events. How often do you think that Wakama events could potentially happen on there, just so that we can get in our minds how busy it could be in terms of incorporating it with all the other water activities that are currently there?
If it was developed to an extent of a laned course, we currently run the secondary school Waka Armour Nationals on Tiki Tapu annually, 110 participating schools, 1,800 competitors. We have Makoia Island, which is a long distance race out and around, and we operate from the Water Sports Trust end. We have tried to do some Waka Tangata and Waka Toa events, but it's not suitable out in front of where the Scout Hall is now and where the Waka placement. So we do support the placement of Te Aroha Waka at that end. Wellington are starting to stage more and more Waka activities. Kayaking, what's the name from Whakatane, the Olympic champion, Lisa Carrington, they use a 500 metre course. Rowing don't, but in talking to the rowing people, they could possibly do a one-off, a 500 course event. So it wouldn't only be Waka Armour, it would be a range of paddling sports that would use a facility.
Are there any further questions for our two submitters? Thank you. That's given quite a lot of clarification, and obviously referencing our plan is important, and we do thank you for your support for the placement of the Waka Tower and the additional information for the panel will be very useful. So thank you for that. Thank you. Now, I noticed that the Hammonds are here, and while you haven't, Craig and Terry, you've made a submission and haven't requested to speak, would you like to add anything in light of what you've heard from any of the other submitters? I'd like to give you this opportunity since you are here. If you could come and, if you don't want to, that's fine. But if you would like to make, we need you at the microphone so it can be recorded and so everyone can hear. Just thought that you are a long-term operator down there, and it is useful for the other submitters to hear a range of views as well as the panel. So, tēnā kōrua and welcome.
Kia ora. My name's Terry Hammond. We went through the submissions line by line, and we didn't. We could understand why these submissions were made that way, so that enabled the future development to go ahead unhindered because of the original plan. And so we didn't find any fishhooks in there. What we went through line by line was, okay, yeah, this is a submission to allow the development. How that development looks, we don't know. There's no detail on that, but the submissions allowed the development. If we kept the plan as it was, there would be no development. So, any comment, Craig?
No, lovely. Yes, Councillor, are you happy to have some questions? Because I do know I have
Not happy,
wrangled
but yeah,
you up at the desk here. So, okay, Councillor
Sorry to
Donaldson.
put you through this torture through you, Chair. There is a paragraph in there about the wharf area and the existing wharf structures be repaired, maintained until such time as they are removed or replaced. And you heard the previous submitter talk about replacement if it happens in a different location. Do you have a view on location of a wharf structure?
Is that our brief now? Do we discuss that now? Or? I mean, in the design there has to be some considerations for what we do and how we do it. Yeah, and I understand that previous submitter too about preserving the lake. As for where, it has to be within reasonable distance of the booking office. So if you're moving it further east, your booking office is located roughly where our little offices are now. It's going to be a disconnect.
I think that will come out in the detailed planning and certainly with the engagement with the stakeholders. As Mr Hammond has so clearly said, this enables us to take the next step to have those next conversations. So thank you for that. Councillor Sturt.
Corporate citizens, we thank you for your submission. One of the things you've recognised in your submission that once the development gets further clarified, you obviously want to ensure that you're at the forefront of any ongoing development. So issues like what the Chair just suggested in terms of the siting of any proposed wharf or any water sport activity, etc., you want to be at the forefront of those discussions at the earliest possible convenience.
I think that would be very helpful in terms of what requirements are needed to enable the vessel to operate. For instance, fueling, discharge of waste, storage of waste and access. So there's a lot of issues that need to be discussed if that structure was renewed or replaced, or and they're more really operating issues than rather design issues. Yeah. So we would like to be very much involved in that. And
I think there's indeed a commitment that is going to be the case. So I pretty much can reassure you from that point of view. Okay, thank you very much. And for coming up, even though you weren't expecting to speak. That's the end of our submissions today. We did receive 2 further submissions from Phil Barclay from Volcanic Air Safaris and also Guy Kingy from the Ohinimutu Development Working Group, and neither wish to speak to their submissions today. So on that note, I'm going to close the hearing, and I'd just like to thank all of those people who have submitted today and those that have come to hear those submissions. We're going to take a break for morning tea now, and then the committee will deliberate in private, and our report will then be sent to the council for ratification. So thank you all for your attendance today.